You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and usually at this point I say, joining me on a Monday is Chris, but it's Wednesday, and Monday was Memorial Day. We went ahead and enjoyed the long weekend. It was my girlfriend's birthday. We celebrated it, and as I understand, Chris, you also celebrated your birthday, right?
I did. Happy birthday to your girl. Yeah, I did. I had a birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday to you.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks, my friend.
And it looked like you had an amazing dinner, so yeah. I know you enjoyed it.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, we got a lot of updates today as well out of OTAs, and also John Lynch, spoke about Brock Purdy. We knew that he was going to be throwing again at some point this week based on what Kyle Shanahan had told us, but now John Lynch pretty much said that he started throwing today, and I have the clip of John Lynch speaking about that. So let's hear it.
Really well. He's just had one session thus far, but we're incredibly encouraged by that. And Brock's a worker. If you give him a task, he's gonna do everything in his power. So these are just timelines, and timelines are just that. They're guidelines. But when I say tracking well, it's just he's hitting all his markers. And it doesn't surprise us because he's putting in the work. And as for best case scenario, we're just going to kind of take it as it comes. But I mean, the hope is he's ready for training camp. The hope is he's ready for the regular season. But what I can tell you is, I mentioned Trey, I mentioned Sam. We feel good about that position holistically. So we're not going to do anything to put, Brock not in a situation where he's not fully healed. And that means not just getting back, getting reps under your belt, the whole deal. So we'll take it as it comes, as we're doing. He's working incredibly hard, and the early returns are really good. So hitting all the timelines.
All right. So obviously, this is great news, the fact that he is throwing again, and just a couple things out of that I want to discuss. First, last week we talked about the fact that, Kyle Shanahan, it seemed he was pretty optimistic, right? That was kind of the tone that we got from Kyle speaking about, Brock Purdy and his hope that he would be ready by week 1. And I don't feel like John Lynch necessarily walked that back, but I feel like there was a more realistic approach to how he, described everything. So saying, we want to make sure that Brock Purdy, not just him being ready week 1, it means he's going to be ready before that and participating in practice before that to be ready for week 1, right? It's not just, oh, you're cleared days before week 1. Okay, now you go and play. So I think it was kind of the same thing that Kyle Shanahan told us, honestly. But maybe more so just, again, like a realistic approach. Did you get that same sense?
Yeah, I agree. I will say that I know as part of that KNBR, I think it was KNBR he was on.
Sirius XM. Sorry.
Sirius XM. Okay, that's right. I know as part of that, he also made reference to a QB competition, which I thought may have been a little bit different from some of the language he made that he shared before. It sounded more, to your point, realistic, right? And more open as opposed to being definitive, regarding like a timeline and so on and so forth. So I don't know if there's too much to read into along kind of what you were saying, but from a Brock Purdy perspective, it's good, right? It's good, and so he's not, he is the leader in the clubhouse, as they say. So you want your guy that's the leader in the clubhouse to be healthy, to be in a place to where he's going to get back to being on the field. So it sounds like he is, on schedule, and just remains to be seen how, I guess, the arm reacts from, some of that workout.
Because to John Lynch's point, this is the first session, right? And so, and that barely happened today. So what happens next is, first they're going to see how he's feeling tomorrow. because that will tell you a little bit something. And then when he starts ramping up too, like at any point in this throwing program that he's going to embark in, there could be setbacks. And so I think it's optimistic for now. I think based on all of the markers that he's hitting so far, and Kyle said this too, like there's no reason to not think that he won't be ready week 1 as of right now, but it's a fluid situation. I think we just gotta, remember that. But this is awesome news. I mean, quite frankly, if Brock Purdy is ready week 1, I feel like a huge weight is lifted off, my shoulders, a lot of fans' shoulders, the team's shoulders, I'm sure as well. And so, this is awesome. I'm glad that things are going as planned so far, and hopefully they continue to go that way. But we also got some other news from OTAs. This wasn't, I don't think this was the second OTA practice they've had. This is just the second practice has been open to the media where we actually get updates, right? So Sam Darnold, we heard he took majority of the first team reps in this practice. Last week, it was Trey Lance. This is not a surprise at all, or it shouldn't be, at least to anyone who listened to our podcast or heard Kyle Shanahan speak last week. He said that both Darnold and Lance would rotate, or, the snaps, the first team reps would even out for both of them. So not a surprise at all. I thought it was kind of funny because I started seeing like the national media like catch up to that news and be like, Trey Lance is getting all the first team reps. And then today, like literally the day after, they were all saying that like Sam.
No, you're right.
First team reps. So I thought it was really funny because this was going to happen. It was, I don't know, it was just funny to see the national media be a little behind on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was slow on the uptake, and they were very much so behind. And then in contrast, when today Darnold got most of the first team reps, and it's like that's going to be a story tomorrow or something,
exactly.
Right?
So,
yeah. So it's interesting.
We gotta be prepared. Yeah, we gotta be prepared for the national like overreaction because
sure.
I don't know. They have a different viewpoint, I think, of what this is exactly. But yeah, both quarterbacks threw touchdowns today. Brandon Aiyuk caught both of them. So it's good to see that he's clicking with all of the quarterbacks. That's always a great sign. He was definitely one of the standouts, as was CMC once again. The full breakdown from Grant Cohn. He said Sam Darnold took most of the first string QB reps today and completed 10 of 12 passes with one drop against a defense that was missing all but 3 starters. Trey Lance took most of the second string QB reps and completed 6 of 12 passes with 3 drops and 1 40-yard completion. I like that there's some context there. I know Grant wasn't the only one that mentioned the drops today. In fact, I think all of the beat reporters were pretty much on the same page about that. But that's important, right? When you look at the completions, 6 of 12, 10 of 12. I think it's important to also look at how those incompletions happen, or what were those incompletions, right? And so it seems at least a few of them were drops. It's nice to get that context. We don't always get that, and sometimes we can't just look at stats, I guess, to form an opinion on how a quarterback is necessarily doing. But I'm glad with that one. We got a little bit more detail.
No, I agree. And especially considering the fact that, these practices aren't open to fans and such yet. So you can't see it with your own eyes. You kind of have to take for it what it is, what the beat writers up there are eyes to kind of report that back. And you're right. We don't get that context sometimes. Neither, nor do we know, were there check downs, were they contested catches, or how ball placement was there just good defense on the ones that didn't get completed? So you're absolutely correct. So, I'm just excited to just even, hear that these guys are out there and they're healthy right now and they're throwing and getting reps and all that. So, just, building, stacking days,
Yeah, it's great to talk about like actual football again, and not just, imaginary scenarios in our head. But like back to the drops, like just really quickly, So because we were talking last week about Ronnie Bell and
Yep.
how he was catching everything, and then this week he had two of the drops today. So again,
I think I saw Demo had good coverage on one of them or something.
He did. So that was the other thing. Like, I'm glad we did get context on that. And it's so funny because we were talking about how Deommodore Lenoir, he was the one that was fined like last camp or last OTAs for like too much contact. So this might just be a thing with Lenoir. Like, he doesn't really know how to reel it back, which I totally get. Like, if you're like,
no, that's a good point. No, that's a good point because I did see some stuff like, I saw some stuff like that too, where it's like he had a lot of incidental contact today or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's just him. And so, we're not freaking out about Ronnie Bell, dropping a couple, just like we're not freaking out about him, making every single catch, right? I think we're gonna have a holistic view of everything, how the competitions are shaking out with all of this information together at the end, right? But right now we're just taking it one day at a time. Chris Conley, one of the other receivers who the 49ers signed this offseason, also had a drop, and that are just some of the instances. But a couple players and coaches spoke with the media today as well after the OTA session. Drake Jackson being one of those guys, and he just looks big. He looks bigger than he did last season. He's confirmed that he gained some muscle. He's up 13 pounds, and he said he's still going. So still trying to get bigger, and I think that's great for him. He also acknowledged that, some of his struggles last season were because his body, wasn't really where it needed to be. So I'm glad that he's given this much dedication to getting, a little bit bigger, getting a little more size, strength, and all that, because, if he's going to be that guy that the 49ers are looking to really make that sophomore leap, he needs to put in that work, right? So everything so far seems encouraging on the Drake Jackson front.
No, it does. And the other thing about it is too, is I'm sure that the coaching staff is helping him to utilize his body, right? If that makes sense, because certainly with, especially with weight gains, it's going to maybe there's some change to his technique, or maybe, he uses more power now in his game. I don't know, but it's not just simply like, there is a difference there, right? There will be a difference in the manner in which he goes about with his get off and even engaging at the, point of contact. So I'm interested to see that as well, to, how it translates, especially when they put the pads on during training camp, how he's looking against, offensive line and stuff, if he's using more power, if he's, how he's, whether it's bull rushing or, his moves and swipes and such. So I'll be really interested to see how he utilizes that strength, right, and that size to his advantage.
Yeah, and he did kind of talk about that too. He feels like he can move differently with some of that weight. So yeah, and that's a good point. Like, when you do get that much bigger from one season to the next, like, it does feel a little bit different. Maybe some of the movements that you made before, there is some of that adjustment, maybe just like mental adjustment, but that is a thing. So yeah, I would hope that the coaches are working with him on that and getting him up to speed with this new size and teaching him how to use it. But Brandon Aiyuk was one of the other players who spoke with the media today. And, one of the best, I think, portions of what he said, he talked about Jaycee Brown, who his locker's next to his. And I thought it was kind of funny that he said, he doesn't really talk much, but, he just works hard and stuff. That reminded me of Brandon Aiyuk when he was like a rookie in his sophomore year too. Very soft-spoken guy. He's still a soft-spoken guy, but he didn't really talk much at all. And I think like interviews were like pulling teeth for Brandon Aiyuk. And, I think he's gotten a little more comfortable with time. And maybe they just wanted to pair those guys together because they're kind of similar in that way. Obviously, a lot of talent from both of those guys, but, introverts at heart. And another thing he said about Jaycee Brown, he's had about 3 to 4 interceptions already in OTAs. That's insane. And he even said he could have had 5, but he dropped one of them. So Jaycee Brown, who, coming out of college had a lot of interceptions under his belt, looks like that will continue. I continue to think that it's going to be really hard to keep this kid off the field, especially if he's going to be a ball hawk like he has been.
I agree. And I think it's a good point you made. I totally forgot about, I think one of the people notably, Brandon Aiyuk's rookie year was Jimmy Garoppolo mentioning that, Brandon Aiyuk doesn't talk much, but he's out there, he's a baller and so on. I love players like that. You know what I mean? That allow their play to speak for them. I love it. Not to speak ill of players who are more boisterous or have more, they're more vocal. That's all good too. But I really like those players who just go out there and ball and let their play speak for who they are. I found that interesting when Aiyuk said that about Jaycee Brown's interceptions. I'm curious did they all come in the non-media portion? Because, I know this is the 5th practice. I know that the media was there today. They were there last Wednesday, but I have not heard anything about that. I didn't hear about, and they're not that it hasn't been shared or mentioned by beat writers. I just haven't simply seen it about him pulling down some of those interceptions and such. So that's awesome. That stuck out to me because, and notably, I guess you can say as I'm saying this out loud, we've heard a lot about how the offenses looked and what's happening with the quarterbacks, of course. So that's kind of overshadowing what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. But I'm glad that he spoke up for his guy, his teammate, and kind of mentioned, gave some insight into how Jaycee Brown's looking, because I haven't heard that anywhere else.
Yeah, and he didn't have to say that, but
yeah,
obviously it's catching some eyes in practice already. And yes, Chris, I believe not every OTA session is open to the media. So that's why I think we do miss some of what happens in some of these sessions. So even in the days where the media is there, I think there's some things we miss. There are some things obviously we don't get the full picture on. Then you add the days that media is not even there. So there is a lot that I think, we're missing right now, that some of these practices that are open to the media help fill in some of those blanks, but not every practice is the same, right? So obviously Jaycee Brown, though, seems to be consistently good throughout these practices. And Brandon Aiyuk, of course. Cam Inman said that Aiyuk had a couple of sweet catches. Grant Cohn said that the best play of the day was a 40-yard strike up the left sideline from Trey Lance to Brandon Aiyuk. So, like I said, he had touchdowns from both Lance and Darnold today. So, when he spoke to the media, he also said, "I'm about to take off." So, hey, get pumped, faithful. Brandon Aiyuk is here to have I think another breakout year. I think he's just going to grow on the previous season. So year 4 loading. Chris Forster, 49ers offensive lineman, also spoke with the media today. And that's nice because I think sometimes these positional coaches, we don't get a look into a real detailed look into some of these positional battles, how the depth is shaking out, things like that. He did say that right guard Spencer Burford looks like a different guy compared to last year. And he has told Burford that the starting right guard spot is his job right now. So I think we all figured that, but I think it's good to know that Burford's gotten that, confirmation as well. And he also confirmed that the plan is for Colton McKivitz to take over the starting right tackle spot again, as we all, pretty much figured and knew. But it seems like if someone were to beat out Burford or McKivitz, it would have to be a combination of either one of those guys looking poorly and someone else looking, a lot better than them. So I think right now we can pencil in and maybe use a pen to write in Spencer Burford, right guard, and right tackle Colton McKivitz, which, again, not really new, but you're hearing it from the positional coach himself. So that says something. Yeah, go for it, man.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, I agree. It does say something. And also, the early vote of confidence, in my opinion, right? Like, practice 5 of OTAs, not even training camp yet, knowing that, we brought in some free agents on the offensive line and such. I mean, I think that's great. Again, these coaches, they know the personalities of these players. They know their work ethic and so on and so forth. So I get the impression, giving that vote of confidence now, Forrester doesn't have the impression that, Burford's going to start slacking or anything like that, throughout the rest of camp and so on. I mean, that's amazing to me. I would have expected them to kind of be coy on that at this point, and then maybe, say something later on in during training camp about, maybe Burford, like, separating himself clearly or so on and so forth. But to say it now, I mean, I know, again, given those guys that they had brought in to be, I thought healthy competition potentially throughout OTAs and into training camp, to have that vote of confidence now is big time.
Yeah, that is. And I believe like Spencer Burford, that like I've seen other reports that he's also gained some, muscle. He looks bigger as well. So, and that's probably why Forrester said that he looks like a different guy. So yes, definitely the vote of confidence again this early. That's big. And I think for Colton McKivitz, who, didn't even really start much last season, right? I think that's big for him too, because while we assumed that he would be the guy at right tackle, again, I think the fact that they know that this early, obviously last season, there was enough that he showed, through practices, through the playing time that he did get, showed that he is a guy who's capable of being a starter on this offensive line. So I think, yeah, that's big news for both Burford and McKivitz. And for the some depth guys, Nick Zakelj, last year's 6th round pick, he's working strictly in the 3 interior spots, is what Forrester said. And in particular at center, to see if he can be the backup behind Jake Brendel. Now, Nick Wagner, one of the 49ers beat writers, said that Zakelj struggled with snaps and exchanges today. So that's just today, we don't know what happened all the other practices. So just something to keep an eye on. Let's not overreact about that yet. Again, I mean, he's just the backup, right? But obviously, like, I think I've had a lot of questions about Nick Zakelj just because I think there was a lot of optimism about him, and I thought that he would get a good crack at being the starting center last season, when he was the 6th round pick. And even when Jake Brendel hadn't really re-signed with the team yet, I kind of thought, oh, like, what about Nick Zakelj? We just haven't heard that much about him. So this is the update that we got from him today. So he's working the interior spots and might work out as the backup center, but we'll just have to see. Another, depth guy that we heard about today, undrafted free agent rookie Joey Fisher. Chris Forrester said he's definitely a guard. So competing for one of the depth spots on this offensive line to be a guard, and battling to get a spot on the 53. And I'm sure that battle will continue, throughout camp for Joey Fisher.
Yeah, I agree. And now that, the offensive line looks like it's coming into form, like, technically June starts tomorrow. So we're still in May, and it looks like, the starting 5 is coming into shape. I'm really curious to see what the second team looks like, what that depth looks like. Right. So there's still some, some of the guys that were brought over in free agency. Of course, there were some, guys on the practice squad last year that didn't play, like Jason Poe, for instance. Like, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out from the depth perspective. But that's arguably kind of the story probably for the remainder of training camp, amongst other things like the quarterback and stuff, of course, position. But, depth on the offensive and defensive line, that'll be definitely something to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think like this team is at a point where the starters are more or less solidified, and they have been for, a year or two now. where I get excited about like the depth battles. It's like, yeah, like new competition, bring it on. Even though it's just like second and third string we're talking about here, but I don't know. I get excited about that kind of stuff.
It is. I do too, though. I do too, though, because unfortunately, the Niners haven't been the most the healthiest team in the league. So, because of how things have happened in the past, injury related, not that I'm hoping for that in the future, obviously, those guys typically get some run. So it is kind of exciting to see that. And then also, especially from a defensive line standpoint, that depth has also, contributed to, the strength of the team, really, that being the defensive line. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think probably I know this word is used in a negative way, but in a more casual, football fan may not really think about that in that respect. But yeah, the depth is critical, notably because of our injury history, but then also because, that's really what reinforces us to just, be that much better than the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And another battle that we're all, on pins and needles, very excited to see how it shakes out is the kicker competition, right? We got comments about kickers, in the live chat. You love to see it. And yeah, I mean, Brian Schneider did talk about he spoke to the media today, obviously was asked about Jake Moody, because what else is there to talk about for a special teams coach in May, right? Like, so he did give a little more detail as to Jake Moody's private workout in Michigan, which like we've heard a little about, and we heard that, Schneider put him through some intense things or just to try to, trip him up or things like that, see how he would react to certain situations. And so we got a little more detail. So brutal snaps and other elements designed to mess with his rhythm. And Schneider said that Moody was outstanding under pressure and in those circumstances. And after that, he said, I don't care where we take him. This is the guy. You can say that he became convicted. So Jake Moody, I mean, much has been said about, picking Jake Moody at 3, but like clearly Brian Schneider had a big say in this. And clearly that private workout is what sold them so hard on Moody. And so based on what they put him through, it sounded like it was some kind of like gauntlet that they put him through, and he clearly passed with flying colors. So I think that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. And then also, I think in one of Jake Moody's first media availability opportunities, he provided a little bit more context too. I think like it was like a backup tight end or something like that was like snapping to him, and like he was saying that some of the balls were skipping back, and so of course it's all timing with the kicker, right? So like that could have messed him up and stuff too, but not that was by design, but at any rate, he was able to excel even with those bad snaps and and all that with his timing and everything. So yeah, it does sound, I think this is probably the first time I've ever heard of a rigorous tryout or workout, I guess, for a kicker or something. But hey, if it's going to happen, it's going to be with the Niners, I'm sure. That's the story.
I mean, but it's like, I kind of wonder if like the fact that they moved on from Robbie Gould, who was, nails for this team, especially in the playoffs, if there was a part of them that felt like, okay, if we're going to move on from a guy like Robbie Gould, like we got to be sure that a rookie is going to be at that level or better than that for us, because as we know, seasons could end on a missed kick, right, from a kicker. So you got to be very sure that whoever you bring in is going to be someone who can handle that kind of pressure. So I kind of wonder if like all of that encouraged them or inspired them, I guess, I don't know if the right word, to want to put him through that kind of test and that kind of workout. Because I mean, I don't know if that's a common thing for kickers to go through, but I certainly haven't heard of something so, I guess, like rigorous. I don't know.
No, I agree. No, it's got to be that, right? They had to be probably very convinced that was going to be their guy. They said they tried out or looked at 27 of them. And I'm sure that really influenced, their decision making, knowing that they're going to be moving on from Robbie, or not going to be making another attempt to go after him if they couldn't find someone that they were confident in.
Who is Robbie Gould's still available, so like if they didn't want a kicker in the draft, like I think they could have and would have like looked into bringing Gould back. But
I agree.
We've got Jake Moody and we've got Zane Gonzalez. Kicker watch. According to Matt Mayoko, Jake Moody made his attempts from 33, 38, 43, and 53. So he was 4 for 4. Zane Gonzalez missed from 43, but he made all the others, 33, 38, and 48. He was 3 of 4. I just want to know, how long are these OTA sessions, and why does it take them like that long to kick 8 kicks between like the two of them? Like, I know this is all they do the entire practice, but it's like that just that feels very inefficient. Like,
yeah, no, you're right. That is interesting. I didn't think about it like that. You're absolutely correct.
They might do other stuff, but like stretching, kickoffs,
Chinese, and an additional piece of information too. I guess I stumbled upon something that David Lombardi said. I guess on that 52-yard field goal that Moody made, Lombardi emphasized like the distance on it. He said it can, continue to travel, beyond the goalpost and hit the fence. I have not been to the practice field. I know you were out there at training camp last year, Steph, but he said that it easily had traveled 60 yards in the air before it started to come down. So, I mean, as advertised, as far as the booming leg, you know what I mean? But, that's a little bit of additional, context and information on that. So we'll see how they continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the battles I'm paying attention to. Somewhat of a joke, but also seriously, I am. So yeah, kicker battles. We love to hear it. Deebo Samuel was back at the facility today. He was at today's practice, but was doing some work on the side, as was Mooney Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Eric Armstead, Tashawn Gibson, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, and I know Fred Warner also didn't participate today. He's been there, more of a just like, coaching the younger guys up a little bit. So yeah, some of these veterans not really doing too much, which is fine by me. Bosa, Trent Williams, and Javon Hargrave are still not present, but it's voluntary. So again, totally fine by me as long as they come in for training camp ready to rock and roll. I have no reason to think that those guys won't be ready.
No, I agree. I know, I was curious what your perspective was on that. I know some people are very opinionated one way or the other as it relates to some of the vets either showing up or not showing up to OTAs. I think for me personally, and this is pure selfishness, but I would love to see the entire team out there for the purpose of, just easing my mind. Sometimes it's like, oh man, this guy's looking out of shape, or oh man, he's looking like, overweight or something, even though there is 40 days between OTAs and training camp. But it's still kind of, I don't know, selfish, reassuring to know that they're looking good out there. And I like it from a leadership standpoint. Everything that you've heard thus far from Christian McCaffrey and so on is that he's out there going full speed and being active in all the drills and cheering on even the defense and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, I agree with you. Javon Hargrave, Trent Williams, Bosa, they'll be fine. But I look forward to seeing them out there during training camp for sure.
I almost feel like Nick Bosa needs to be the one like running the workouts, because clearly whatever he's doing in the off season is working for him. Comes in looking like a Greek god or something. Well, what are these other guys missing? Enlighten them, But those are the updates that we have from OTAs. But Chris, I know something happened earlier or like last week over the weekend. It might have been Friday at this point. In regards to a former 49er, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes.
Was it leg, foot? I'm like already forgetting. It was his foot, right? So his foot. And this is the same foot injury he had with the 49ers. didn't heal right. He went on with his off season, obviously, as a free agent. The Raiders caught it during his physical. This is why his introductory press conference was delayed, because they discovered this in the 11th hour and had to add a waiver amendment to his contract, basically. And so I know you had some thoughts on this. I talked about this, in another episode, but what were your thoughts on what happened with Jimmy? What's going
Yeah,
on?
so I just wanted to, I know we had texted about it a little bit, didn't get a chance to chat about it too much, but, just curious, even people in the chat, conversation perspective. I'm curious if I am overreacting when I think to myself that it's something to keep an eye on, right? And this is what I mean when I say that. So walk with me on this a little bit. So like, of course, Jimmy, gets hurt last year. Initial thoughts were that he would need surgery. And then, the training staff said that it should heal on its own. Now, there's definitely a possibility that, of course, the bones that he broke just didn't heal on their own. And that's definitely a possibility. That's not necessarily what I've heard so far in the news or the media or whatever, but whatever. But, the fact that, I put him on IR, I feel as if the team themselves really thought that Jimmy had a chance to come back to play. And given the fact that he failed his physical, and they're like, nah, man, like you need to get surgery to fix this situation. And then I try to think about stuff in the past, right? Like, different injuries that have occurred with the Niners, and there's, frequently setbacks, thinking about the comments that Raheem Mostert made when he left, talking about how he felt kind of rushed to get back on the field. And even some of the reports that came out after whatever year that was, the big injury year that the Niners had, I think that was 21, where a lot of the team members were hurt and stuff. And I think Jimmy had a high ankle sprain that year or something. And potentially that there was a rub between Jimmy and the training staff, the coaching staff, because he wouldn't come back to play. And kind of shut himself down at the end of the year. Like, I don't know. It just got me thinking, you know what I'm saying? Like, I text you about it because it's like, are these anomalies? Are these coincidences? We'll never know, but it makes me think that I wonder if, and I don't subscribe to like, what some fans will say on Twitter or whatever, like fire the training staff and all that. I'm not saying that, but however, when you see all these circumstances, individually, it kind of makes you think like, is there something up there? Like, are we rushing guys back too fast? Like, are they being, assessed or analyzed effectively or whatever? Again, these guys get paid a lot of money. Guys and men and women get paid a lot of money to do their job in that training room, but that's to me at best, it's a bad look on the Niners, I think. And at worst, there might be something there as it relates to, the evaluation that he received. So I don't know, might be something to pay attention to moving forward. I don't know.
That's interesting because you brought up something I hadn't thought of before, because this whole time we're kind of like not laughing, but we're looking at the situation that the Raiders are in right now and thinking to ourselves, well, that's why the 49ers moved on from Jimmy. Like, yeah, right. We knew something like this would happen at some point because, Jimmy Garoppolo has dealt with injuries, throughout his career. But you bring up a good point that this is somewhat a reflection of the 49ers training staff potentially, or like their medical staff,
right. Mm-hmm.
That maybe they were off the mark on thinking that he didn't need surgery. Now, I don't know, like maybe his agent was also pushing to not do a surgery either, because that would look bad. Another surgery for Jimmy, right?
Right.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know really who's to blame, but it's definitely something to keep in the back of our minds. And, it's a fair question for sure to kind of wonder, what's going on in there. And it was already fair, I think, to question, the conditioning staff or like the training staff, medical staff, what have you, just because of all the injuries that not only happened to Jimmy Garoppolo, but just the entire team during this time. You mentioned the setbacks as well that have happened like in past years. So yeah, it's a fair question. Definitely something to, consider and keep an eye on. Yeah. And Alberto here in the comments says, as a player, if you're not feeling 100%, don't take that chance. In the end, you're the only one that knows your body.
True.
And that's true. I think a lot of, Jimmy Garoppolo got a lot of flack for that at times. If he didn't feel like 100%, and some people say like, oh, like he quit or quit on the team and whatnot. But I mean, that's the truth. I mean, you got to take care of your body. You only get one of them. A question from Alberto. Switching gears here to another topic. He said, what do you guys think? And is it a possibility that Hopkins could land with the 49ers? I mentioned this on the Bully Ball podcast yesterday with Jay. Haven't gotten your thoughts on it yet, Chris. I mean, do you think now that he's a free agent, there's some possibility the 49ers could be in play?
Well, I think, as Lynch always says, you always look into everything. So I think in that respect, maybe they, kind of do some poking around. I don't know if it works from a financial standpoint, not so much because of this year, because of course they freed up some space already. And then, with Nick Bosa's extension, that his salary cap number is probably going to go down a little bit. So they may be able to make it work financially this year. But next year, as of right now, the Niners are like $12 million under the salary cap. So which would require obviously either extensions or moving players or whatever. And Hopkins probably wants, at least a 2 or 3 year deal or something like that. And then given some of the other teams that are in play, it seems like, the Niners definitely have the framework he's looking for. I think he said he wants a good defense. He wants a good front office. Our quarterback situation isn't as solidified yet as some of the other teams he may be looking at, but they're not as good of a cap situation as we are either, though. So, as been mentioned with the Bills and the Chiefs, again, not that they couldn't move some money around. It would be interesting. You always hear about the mouths to feed and so on. I think if you want to make something work, you make it work. I would be more interested in potentially taking a flyer on another person for the defensive line than DeAndre Hopkins, given the weapons that we do have. I would lean that way. I don't know if Hopkins would have interest in coming to the Niners, notably because of the quarterback situation. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like the quarterback situation may be the only thing that would give him pause, and wanting to come to San Francisco. But I mean, besides that, they do kind of check all of the boxes, except for, maybe the money, the contract that he might be looking for, which I don't even think we really know what kind of contract he's looking for. But one point that Jay made yesterday, I mean, he's got to be looking at what Odell Beckham got from the Ravens. True. Coming off an injury.
And out for a year. Odell was out for a whole year.
Exactly. So he's got to be looking at least that and saying, I should get more. Like that should be my floor. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's at least some type of framework to for him to negotiate. But I'm not sure the 49ers would really be looking to invest that in a, receiver right now. To your point, I do think there'll be discussions about it internally. They always think about it. They always do their due diligence, as they say. Maybe had a phone call about it, but I don't see it going much further than that. I don't know why. Like it's not a huge need for this team. I agree that if they were to bring any free agent in at this time, which, I don't even think they do right now, but I would probably be looking at defensive line because there are a number of good defensive linemen still available out there. But the big thing is, don't want him going to the NFC. Under no circumstance do you want that to happen. I mean, him going to the Eagles would be catastrophic, potentially.
Or
keep him away. Dallas. Keep him away. Keep him away from the NFC. I'm hoping that if the 49ers don't get him, which again, I don't really think they do, Chiefs, Bills, and for I was saying this yesterday, as a football fan, I think seeing him on the Chiefs would be awesome. Like, imagine Hopkins, as talented of a receiver as he is, with a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. Like, that would be awesome. And they really don't have like a number one receiver on that team. Like, they really don't. And so I selfishly, from like a football fan purely perspective, I'd want to see him on the Chiefs more so than the Bills. The Bills already have, some other guys on that offense who are focal points, but Patrick Mahomes has been like throwing to like nobodies, you know what I mean, since Tyreek Hill left. So I'd love to see that just from entertainment standpoint.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree from as being a football fan. A landing spot, and I have no clue what their financial, position looks like, but Dallas, I mean, arguably, their last year is maybe a different playoff game if they have, an Amari Cooper, for instance, on that team still, right? I know we're going long, but real quick, like not to go off on a tangent too big with those guys, but arguably, they move on from Amari Cooper because they're still paying Ezekiel Elliott and so on, but of course Zeke's washed and he's gone now at this point. But they would have maybe looked a little different from an offensive standpoint if there was a number 2 or 1A or 1B or whatever you want to call it to CeeDee Lamb, right? So again, I don't know what their financial position looks like, but I would not be surprised if the Cowboys have picked up the phone, right? So and that could be a little bit of a different circumstance as well. But we'll see. He's gonna land somewhere, right? I mean, it's one of those things. But this could get funny. This could get interesting to Alberto's comment if, we're hovering around like the end of training camp coming up on week 1 and the market, is telling him, hey, we're not going to pay you that much money, man.
Yeah.
That is when someone may get him for a steal or something. So maybe at that point, something crazy happens in San Francisco, looks to make a deal. But I think it would take something like that happening before DeAndre Hopkins really has a high chance of even coming to the team.
Yeah. So 49ers or keep him out of the NFC. That's the only ask here. We don't ask for much. But Chris, I think we've hit on a number of topics today. And hey, I feel good about talking about football again. Once again, Brock Purdy throwing again. That's some great news. Reports out of OTAs are great. So, man, positive vibes out here. And Chris, I hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday. As everyone else watching today, I'm going to trivia, The Office trivia. I've watched The Office, but I don't really be watching it like that. So I don't know how this is going to go. The last time that we did The Office trivia, I didn't know anything. So
you're gonna have some diehards in there, that's for sure. Though
I am not one of them. So I'm just there for the food and the drinks and the vibes. So, but all right, guys. I hope you all have a good rest of your Wednesday evening. Peace.